Hello everyone, and welcome to another Baxter Student Ambassador Program webinar. Presenting for us today is Allison Monk, one of our BSAP finalists from the British Columbia Institute of Technology. Now, before we get started, I'd like to let everyone know that if you have any questions at all during this presentation, just type them into the Q&A box, and those questions will be answered after the presentation has finished. Hi Allison, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. So since you're already sharing your screen with us, you can get started on your presentation whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I would normally like to ask, how's everybody doing? There is quite a few of us today, so I think that might just be confusing. I hope everybody is well. I just want to start off by saying thank you for taking the time to listen to my webinar. Thank you to the judging panel for allowing my presentation to be held so late. It was extremely helpful, as I'm sure Morgan has explained with our heavy course load. Hi Morgan, thanks for letting me survive this last week of finals and term projects. Today I've been tasked with presenting Copenhagen to you and how Air Transat has newly incorporated this destination for the summer of 2020. I have to say, I hope there are no Danes in the room. I did not know how difficult Danish was. I have done my very best to learn how to pronounce some of these words, but please bear with me. So today I will start off with a history of Air Transat and their environmental efforts and achievements, then move into Copenhagen. I'll briefly touch on the history of the Danish capital, the attractions it has to offer, and finally the relationship between Copenhagen and Air Transat. Transat began in the early 1980s when Jean-Marc Eustache and the founding group created Traffic Voyages, a wholesaler specializing in selling France as a destination to Quebecois. In 1987, Air Transat was launched with the $8.25 million generated from an IPO and would continue to grow and acquire tour operators until they were the Canadian leader in sun destinations and are now the third largest airline in Canada. Now, Transat Distribution Canada consists of more than 450 owned, franchised, and affiliate agencies such as Transat Travel, Club Voyages, Voyages in Liber, Marlin Travel, and Travel Plus. Some notable accolades for Air Transat include World's Best Leisure Airline in 2018 and 19, and Favorite Leisure Airline at the Agents Choice Awards in Toronto in June 2018. With a wide variety of product offerings of flights, tours, cruises, and packages, and the exclusivity of being the only airline flying direct to Copenhagen from Montreal, Air Transat is a strong, growing organization. Transat and Air Transat have made monumental steps towards sustainability and reducing their footprint on the Earth. In October 2018, Transat became the first major international tour operator to be Travel Life certified for all activities, meaning they hold the highest standards of sustainability as per the Global Sustainable Tourism Council industry criteria. This past November, the Quebec government recognized Transat as a Performance Plus level organization in their ICI on Recycle Plus program. Through their public transit incentive program, Transat is finding ways to encourage their employees to reduce their individual carbon footprint as well. Air Transat recently began renewing their fleet, starting with the Airbus A321, which boasts greenest in its class recognition. And their fuel savings program aims to reduce fuel consumption and therefore greenhouse gas emissions through adjustments to their flight plan, piloting, and aircraft weight reduction. By using digital analysis, Air Transat can create the most optimized flight while taking into account factors such as weather, traffic, winds, flap settings, optimized climb, and most economical speed to minimize fuel consumption. Pilots receive comprehensive fuel efficiency training, and there has been a strong effort to digitize information to reduce the number of manuals and manifests on board. These efforts have resulted in a steady decline in CO2 emissions from Air Transat flights since 2008, and Air Transat is also a member of the SAF Plus Consortium, who is a finalist in Natural Resources Canada's competition for sustainable fuel. Like many European cities, Copenhagen has a deep and rich history. Founded in 1167 by Bishop Absalon, Copenhagen began as just a little hamlet. which I learned is just a fancy word for tiny village. In 1416, King Eric of Pomerania moved into Copenhagen Castle, and it was at this time that Copenhagen became the Danish capital. Copenhagen was attacked and rebuilt for centuries, plagued by the Hanseatic League, wars with Sweden, the bubonic plague, 2 fires that saw at least a third of the town destroyed, the British bombing, and a German occupation during the war. After the trauma of the Great Depression and the devastation of World War II, the city adopted the Finger Plan in 1948, which saw an effort to rebuild and grow. This made way for much of the architecture and beauty that is Copenhagen now. In 2000, the Øresund link was built to connect Malmö, Sweden, and Copenhagen and serve the Copenhagen airport at Kastrup. Copenhagen is full of a rich culture and history and can be seen at many sites and attractions. One of these top attractions in Copenhagen is the Tivoli Garden. The second largest amusement park in Europe attracts families and visitors of all ages to either partake in the thrilling rides or just enjoy the scenic gardens. Hans Christian Andersen wrote The Little Mermaid in 1837, and in 1913, Edvard Eriksson created a statue inspired by the story seen here. Lesser known fact, there's a similar statue of The Little Mermaid off of the seawall in Stanley Park in Vancouver. Strøget is an outdoor pedestrian mall showcasing the mixture of history and modern culture, one of the largest in Europe, as is Nyhavn, which was once an old fishing community. Both of these are examples of gentrification in a now popular place to sip coffee or wine and enjoy the scenic views. The National Museum is filled with artifacts from Denmark's rich past, particularly bronze and Viking artifacts. The history I did touch on a little bit earlier. Christiansborg Palace is home to Denmark's Supreme Court, Parliament, and Prime Minister's office, and it is still used today by the Danish royal family for social engagements and functions. Christiania got its roots in the counterculture movement of the 1970s and is thriving today as an alternative community for artists and freelancers, and a little bit offbeat. You can also tour through Rosenborg Castle and see into the life of the 17th century King Christian IV. With the introduction of Air Transat's direct flight from Montreal to Copenhagen, there's so much to offer to Canadians. For Canadians looking to travel to Copenhagen or Scandinavia, only a passport is required if the stay is shorter than 90 days. For stays over 90 days, a visa is required. But other than that, it's just local travel requirements that will be required. There is also a selection of guided tours, packages, and cruises for your trip to Copenhagen. 2 different multi-city packages are highlighted by Air Transat, Denmark's highlights and Capitals of the North, which also visits Stockholm and Oslo, as well as 2 package tours, the Viking route in Denmark and Sweden, and Copenhagen and Norwegian fjords. These are both all focused on culture, nature, and taking in everything that Scandinavia has to offer. Air Transat is truly a full-service tour operator, offering Copenhagen a la carte, including flights, hotels, car rentals, as well as new car rentals. Air Transat has a strong relationship with the travel trade industry, being voted favorite leisure airline in 2018 by the Agent's Choice Awards. Copenhagen has a rich, diverse culture that has been growing for centuries, and Air Transat has now brought that direct to Canadians. I want to say thank you to everybody that joined in and that took the time to listen and judge my presentation. Thank you so much. Does anybody have questions?
Thank you very much, Allison.
Thank you.
So if any questions get submitted into Zoom here, I'll read them out to you.
Oh, okay.
And if anyone here in the room with me has a question, I'll just put them on the line.
And I will wait patiently.
So Allison, you mentioned flights out of Montreal.
Mhm.
Does Transat fly to Copenhagen from other Canadian cities as well?
Currently, Air Transat is not flying directly from any other Canadian cities, but there are quite regular flights connecting Montreal with Toronto Pearson and Vancouver International Airport. There are some flights connecting Calgary as well, and I do believe they fly to other European destinations direct from Toronto, but being a company based in Quebec, the majority of their flights do come out of Montreal. They're international flights, I should say.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Allison. My name's Ian Stalker, and I work with Dan. Copenhagen certainly looks, I think it's Copenhagen, looks like a wonderful city in the summer. Do you think it would be an attractive place to visit during the winter?
Definitely, there are lots of different product offerings with in Copenhagen for all times of the year. That being said, the expanse of my knowledge is focused on the summer months. That's where my research has been focused. The flights that Air Transat is offering are running through the summer months and ending in September.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Allison.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan.
Allison, what was the biggest challenge you faced when preparing for this webinar?
I have to say that the incredible history of Copenhagen was a huge mental roadblock for me. I think that because I don't have the most diverse European historical background, and because there is so much of it, I was afraid that I wouldn't do it justice, or that maybe my presentation wouldn't be on brand with what this huge European city has to offer. I mean, if I spent this whole time talking about like the best coffee shops, I might have missed the mark. Or like if I had presented about Italy and not mentioned the wine industry. So I kind of wanted to try to beef up on that and get a little bit more under my belt. And it was so much. I read so many pages and tried to really like get a grasp for what the city was and what it had been and how it had become. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges, because there is so much information.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. Okay, I do believe that's it for the questions. I'd like to thank everyone that tuned in the webinar today. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your day. And Allison, thank you so much for presenting for us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your week.
You as well. And thank you so much for participating in the 2020 Baxter Student Ambassador Program. We'll be in touch.
Okay, great.
Bye, everyone.